All right, it's October 15th right now, and this is a review of a Carrie mango. So this is a small fruit on this Carrie mango. Usually it's a bit bigger. This one's pretty small. Maybe it should be, I think, on average, maybe about half the size bigger. So Carrie mango, from what I can recall of the flavor, reminds me of a milder version of queso, and I have heard people described it as a Florida queso. I mean, it has some of that same smell, that Florida smell of a queso, and just toned down a bit. So we'll see how this ends up tasting. I picked this about 2 days ago, and I kind of just picked it, and it came off real easily. The sap was interestingly very just white, but I believe this is right. And Carrie is one of those varieties where they say you shouldn't let it overripe. And like if it had fell off the tree, you'd probably be eating that day or that night. So we'll see how this one goes. This will be my first kind of homegrown Carrie. This one was grown in a pot. And I have a few more that's in a pot right now. Interesting thing about Carrie, it seems like it is a consistent producer in California. This set fruit on the second bloom. The first bloom didn't make it, but the second blooms did make it. And that seems to be a report out of most people that, the second bloom usually sets fruit. Versus queso, I have heard from people that has said queso is a good producer or that is a bad producer. My experience with queso is that it hasn't seemed to grow that well. It seems a little bit fungal prone, not just with the flowers, but just like the plant overall itself. So that's my experience with queso. So I think I lean towards that queso probably doesn't grow that well here in California, despite some of the reports I've heard out of San Diego, at least in my kind of Orange County, LA area, it probably doesn't do that well. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this open. Very nice orange flesh. Hopefully it did not get overripe. Maybe I should have ate this like a day before. Seems like it's getting to a point where it's a little bit overripe. So kind of lives up to that reputation where it goes overripe very quickly. Edible skin. Very soft, kind of creamy flesh. Has a bit of that floriness that you kind of, that Indian spice kind of floriness that you kind of get with Alfonso and queso. This has a little bit more of the tartness than I recall in queso, but that's maybe because I'm not really sure why that would be the case. But it does remind me of a queso. Like everything about this reminds me of a queso. Just a bit toned down version. This has a little bit better acid, subacid component to it, and it doesn't have that strong floral aftertaste and aroma that queso has. I can absolutely see why some folks have called this a Florida queso. Very good. Queso is one of my favorite mangoes, and I love everything about this one too. It's has a little bit more sub-acid component to this than the queso. And it has just enough of that floral kind of queso, Alfonso kind of floral spice to it. I wish there was more of it, but you know, it's there. So here it is. It usually has a bigger seed, but this isn't a full-size fruit, so I think this might have a not quite a nubbin, but like kind of not quite a full-size fruit. So some of these, when I cut into the seed husk, it has like an aborted embryo versus like a nubbin that has no embryo at all. That kind of aborted very early in the stage. This one, I am not sure. You know, the seed seems too flat to be a regular size fruit, but yeah, this is good. This is an awesome fruit. I have a few more fruits hanging on. One thing about Carrie is that it is considered kind of a slower grower, both in Florida and in over here. So it's not that vigorous of a grow, but I like the fact that it sets fruit easily on a second bloom of it, and that seems to be a pretty common for most people that's been growing queso. You're probably gonna just watch me finish the rest of this, and let me try to cut into this seed husk afterwards to see what's in there. I think it's a shriveled up embryo. Here's how the seed husk is. Again, this isn't a regular full-size fruit, so that's why I think the seed is so flat. It's not really that flat of a variety, but we'll see. I'm gonna cut into this. I think it's gonna be a shriveled up, kind of like almost like a pea-sized shriveled up an embryo. And I am right. Here it goes. So here's the kind of shriveled up pea-sized embryo. It's no good. It's not viable. This is not a good embryo. But because it has this kind of like little shriveled up embryo, it usually doesn't develop it usually develops into like a kind of in between size fruit between a nubbin, which I've discussed in a lot of my videos before, and you could kind of take a look at some of those videos where it's pretty much an empty husk, and those fruits just kind of stay very small. They don't even develop the right shape for most of the varieties. And while this one with this aborted embryo usually develops kind of usually the right shape, just a miniature version of it. So that's what you see here. So the shape of this queso looked correct and everything. It was just like the miniature version of it, because I think you probably, most of the time this fruit is probably a lot bigger, you know. So you know, this is the other kind of stage that's in between a nubbin and a healthy fruit, which is a aborted embryo that kind of looks like this pea size, while a nubbin has absolutely no embryo in it. But when you get one of these are very, you know, very tasty fruit. They develop really well, you know, really help well. It doesn't really crack or anything like that. While sometimes when you get the aborted embryo, I mean the husk that has no embryo, those tends to split quite easily from my own experience with the different varieties I've seen. And there you go. There's kind of like all these little pieces left. I'm gonna just go ahead and finish this. If you guys are a fan of queso, I would recommend this variety for California. Even though you know, it's not gonna get very vigorous. It's not gonna really grow that fast, so you have to kind of take precautions in growing it. But you know, it does well enough in a pot. You could keep it in a pot. You know, you might get a couple of fruits a year from a pot, and that might be just good enough for you. I actually have quite a few of these queso in pots on the Florida turpentine rootstock. There's no plans for it to ever go in the ground, but you know, out of that I guess I got 8 or 9 trees. As long as, you know, half of them give me a couple of fruits each year, I am good with that. I love the queso mango, and even though this is a toned down version of it, it's still very good to me. So if you're a queso fan, I would highly recommend getting a Carrie here in California. The queso, I don't think it does that well here versus kind of the Carrie. Excellent food. I love this. Okay guys, well, thanks for sticking with me, seeing me indulge in this kind of tiny this smaller size Carrie fruit. But yeah, if you guys are interested in to know more about it, you know, kind of, I hope this helped out in terms of like describing the flavors, describing a bit of the growth habit, and how well it does here in California. All right, thanks everyone.